Hi everybody, this is Angie from Tourangie.com, and yes, I'm in Bluefield, West Virginia, and this is going to be another video of some of the historic houses of Bluefield. Basically, it's going to be dedicated to Oakhurst. I know we're not quite on Oakhurst yet, but I wanted to start the video early to start talking because I will be showing off, I believe, 6 houses, maybe 7 houses today, all Oakhurst. One is not on Oakhurst, but a lot to talk about. And there's not much room in between these houses. So you're going to see me driving up and back and up and back. And then I'll have a picture posted right in the middle of these videos when I'm talking about it, of the house that I'm talking about at the area that I'm at on Oakhurst. But there are many beautiful houses, many historic houses, and even with these 6 or 7 that I'm showing, that's not all of the historic houses, just even on Oakhurst. Some of this information I've got from the Historical Society, some of it from something called Clio. It's on the internet. Just look it up. It has a lot of information and history of the area, historic houses and stuff. But I found a good bit just through skimming through articles in the Bluefield Daily Telegraph. The elite of the elite lived through here. These houses, it was the social circle, the social center of the world, or of Bluefield, I guess. So, it's like the Gilded Age of Bluefield, society pages and this, that, and the other. So there was a lot of talk about what was going on with the people that lived here. So I found a lot of that amusing. So I'll mention some of that too, along with some descriptions of the houses and the people that lived here. So the first one we're going to talk about today, we're turning left now on Oakhurst. It's right dead in front of us, 700 Oakhurst. So first off, it was built in 1923, and basically it's 3,176 square feet, 5 bedrooms, 3 baths. Like I mentioned, 1923 was when it was built, but Mr. and Mrs. James Bramwell Belcher lived there starting like 1924. And honestly, I thought I was going to find out some information about James Bramwell Belcher, but I really didn't. I know he had 2 daughters, Betty and Helen. Betty ended up being married to a Woolwine. And in moving to West Point, Colonel Walter Woolwine is who she married, and they had 3 kids, Jimmy and Susan and Carol. They all lived here while um, Walter was away with working at Fort Lee and stuff. But Betty also went to the Catherine Gibbs School in New York City for college. Nephew Charles, or it could be his nephew, it could be his son. I believe it's his nephew, though. Went to Washington Lee University and pledged Sigma Alpha Epsilon in 1942. But there was all kinds of things, residential things happening here. Society meetings. There was the Bluefield Junior Women's Club reception in 1940. Uh, they had their husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. James Belcher, had their picture taken while on a cruise in 1947 that was going to the Caribbean and South America from New York. In 1939, they had a social affair where the mother of James B. Belcher resided over the punch bowl. And there was circle meetings there in 1937. Uh, just all kinds of, little fun information about the society pages, I guess is what you would say, the Society of Bluefield. There was a couple other families that had moved in. It looks to be that there was the Judkins family that moved in for a little bit, then the Clarence William Davis family, and then it was sold in, I think, 1978 or 79. And Kathy Pawlowski basically was 1980, had an Easter egg workshop and Christmas party in 1980 and 81. But just a little bit of information about that house and the people that lived there. I do not know exactly what he did, but he had to have had a lot of money When he died in 61, he left Westminster Presbyterian $2,500 and set up an estate for his wife and children and grandkids. All right, we're already on our way to house number 2. It's just up ahead. It's 404 Oakhurst. This was a house designed by Alex Mahood. It's a colonial revival style. It was for John T. Wilson, who was president and treasurer of the Winco Block Coal Company. It was built in 1926. So in 1925, the Wilson family lived on North Street, and before moving to this house, there was a newspaper article about how the Wilsons went on a train trip north and they had to stop in Roanoke, Virginia. Well, on their way back, when they stopped in Roanoke, they met up with Ms. Wilson's dad, who had lived down there and had a warehouse. So they stopped and talked to him, and then they boarded the train back to Bluefield. By the time they got to Bluefield, Ms. Wilson's dad had died in a warehouse fire. So they basically talked to him, and then he went back to his office or his work and died in a fire. So when they got off of train number 1 in Bluefield, they heard the news and got back on train number 2 and headed back to Roanoke. That was 1925. I found that very interesting to be in the newspaper. There was a lot of little different things. There was Christ Episcopal Church meetings held at that house. There was an ad for wanting someone to help cook and clean. Um, Dorothy was their daughter, and it was mentioned that she was returning home from college in 1949. He helped secure funding for the library in 1925, and he was a director for Flat Top National Bank, too. There's also a couple of other owners of this house. It was Jack Lazenby of General Insurance. And then the Deskins, Ms. William Deskin was part of the Rhododendron Club in 1987. They had meetings there at that house. So I figured, hey, I might as well mention that too. Okay, we're moving on to the next house because they're so close together. This is the original house here in the area. It was for $28,000, and basically it was built when this area was just wilderness. Um, in fact, the people that owned this house, they're basically two brothers, and it's the Sanders brothers. Most people know of the Sanders house there at the Bluefield, Virginia line there in behind Burger King. That was Walter Sanders. But this was his brother's house, Judge Joseph M. Sanders, and he was elected as Bluefield's second mayor in 1891. He was one of 5 men who signed the document to incorporate Bluefield as a city in 1889. And this is a Robert Sheffey design. Is the largest 4-square home in the state. The 3rd floor has a ballroom. I found that just shocking. 9 bedrooms, 8,500 square feet, interior woodwork on the property. It's known as the Oaks because there's a lot of oak. Pocket doors feature oak on one side and cherry on the other. A slated roof from 1908. An interesting story was told. Dr. Richard O. Rogers, which was a well-known physician at the time and founding doctor of Bluefield Sanitarium, he wanted a larger house, but he lived on 1300 Whitethorn Street, and basically it was one of the smallest houses that Alexander Mahood had built at the time. Well, Dr. Rogers and Judge Sanders basically traded houses because Judge Sanders wanted a smaller house. So they just traded houses, which was a difference of about 6,000 square feet. I thought that was pretty interesting too. Okay, so now we're heading back up. You see me turn around in the church parking lot. We're going to head back up, and I'm going to talk about the next house. This is a pink stucco Mediterranean revival house. 3-bedroom, 3-bath, hardwood floors, sunroom, patio, which is screened in, has a jacuzzi and a sauna, a second apartment on the second level that has its own exit. It honestly doesn't look like it should be in this area. It's so pretty, though. It's so Mediterranean. But it was built in 1926 for E.S. Pedigo. And he was a founding member of the Flat Top National Bank and was on its board of directors. He died in 1957. There were several newspaper article clippings about meetings at this house. Bland Street Methodist Church meetings, 1939. Um, and of course, like the society page meetings, talking about he had been sick but was convalescing here at the house to recover in 1942. But after his death, it appeared that there was a couple different owners. Uh, at one point, it sold in 1942, or it was for sale in 1942. William J. Phillips had it in the 50s, and then they moved to Roanoke in the 60s. W.J. Williams had it in the 70s and was part of the Cumberland Garden Club. Believe he worked for the Veterans Administration in Washington, D.C. But one of the known people from this area was Elizabeth Key. This is one of her houses, and she had a Founders of Bluefield social here in 1963. Actually, her daughter Frances broke her hip there in that house too. That was 1972. See, and we're already to the next house. So let's talk about it next. 109 Oakhurst, built in 1916, a three-story brick colonial, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, hardwood floors, a formal living room with fireplace, formal dining room, and a carriage house in the back. Architect was Mahood, built for coal pioneer uh, Edward McQuail. Now, this house is supposed to be the exact replica of President Buchanan's house. McQuail's wife used to play at Buchanan's house when she was a child, and it was known as Wheatland, and that was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So they built a house identical to it. Them and their kids, Ed, Jim, and their daughter Grace, lived here. Um, it was for sale at one point in 1964 and 2014 and 2020, but the McQuails had basically church circles or guild meetings here for Christ Episcopal Church. The Beardleys ended up buying it for a little while, and that was Mary Hughes Beardley and Tinnick Remsen Beardley. The Taylors owned it in 1983, and then Wallace Duncan owned it too. And Wallace had Rhododendron Club meetings here in 1973. So, but it's a beautiful house. Okay, well, now we're off to the next house. That's 205 Oakhurst. I could talk about this house for a full hour just because of the people that lived there. Basically, the Pritchard family. Uh, it was a 1941 article planning a party at the country club for the Pritchards. It was Mr. and Mrs. Robert Pritchard. I found a draft notice for Robert. But one of the interesting things was Henry White. So their daughter married Henry White, and White was born in 1892 in Maryland. He started flying planes in 1911 and was instructed by Orville Wright of the Wright brothers. He got his license number 248, and it's signed by Orville Wright. I found that great. Anyway, Henry White was active in the military in World War One. After that, he sold planes for Igor Skarovsky, who was a Russian airplane pioneer. In fact, Igor came in 1954 to Mercer County Airport here in Bluefield for the opening and dedication of that airport. So I found that really neat. Another interesting thing is that this Henry White that I had talked about that lived there at that house. You see me turning around another house. You see a corner of that 205 right there. But like I said, we're going to talk about him a lot. In 1927, Henry White taught Charles Lindbergh how to fly amphibious aircrafts. And then 2 years later, Charles Lindbergh did his famous flight. So and later on in the 1930s, when World War II broke out, Henry White was working in Germany, and to get back to the United States, it was said that the Germany had to do a trade for German captives to release him back to the United States. But while he was in Germany, he met uh, Baroness von Braun, whose son ended up coming to the United States. And that was Werner von Braun. Henry spoke 5 languages and could help uh, the scientist Werner von Braun uh, translate some stuff. He was a rocket scientist. So he came to the United States to help with basically science and rocket science and different things. So there's a lot of interesting history with him. He ended up divorcing his wife Mary Pritchard from that house and moving to California before he died in 1961, and then Mary died in 1963. Okay, now lastly, we're pulling into this house into this parking lot just across from this street from this house. This is Captain Barger's house. I do not have time to talk about him in this video, but the next video talking about the city of Bluefield, as I'm driving around, we will be discussing Captain Barger because he is a very well-known person from this area, had several different houses, worked several different jobs. So he will be featured in my next video when I'm just driving around Bluefield and showing you updates of what's going on, and they're tearing down 2 more buildings in the downtown area. We're going to talk about Captain Barger. This is Angie from Tourangie.com. Come to my website, read my blogs, make appointments so I can help you plan your next travel adventure. Talk to you later.